I've been living in this area for a long time and never once saw a wolf. But eventually, after wolves were introduced in 1996, I started seeing them. At first, I didn't think much of it, but eventually they started causing trouble. I had always been healthy. I believed that if I ate right or active, and that was all I needed to do to take care of myself. In 2001, I got sick, and I didn't know why. I was confused. I was scared. The doctors didn't know what was wrong with me. I kept getting worse. Finally, the doctors found a cyst in my liver, and they drained it, and that was supposed to be the end of it. But when I only got worse after that, eventually, through tests and specialists, we found out that I had contracted the Hydatid disease.
I'm Danny Behrens with Big Game Forever, and I'm the Colorado State Director for Big Game Forever. We are up here in Idaho today to do an interview with a very precious lady who's contracted the Hydatid disease. For security reasons, we will be addressing this precious lady as Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones, how are you today?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good. So we have heard through the grapevine that you had contracted Hydatid disease.
Yes.
And so thank you so much for the opportunity to come up here and interview for this. It's very important that people understand the aspect that humans can contract this disease and that wolves are a very, very, very strong vector of Hydatid disease. The wolves that were introduced into the Yellowstone ecosystem at the time of 1995 and 96 were not tested for this particular disease. And so now here in the state of Montana and here in the state of Idaho, the prevalence of that disease has grown to 62 and 63% in wolves. And so the possibility of humans contracting this disease is very, very positive. And so thank you again so much for the opportunity to come up here within your home and do this interview, especially now as we're facing a ballot initiative in the state of Colorado. We want people to know the truth about wolves, and especially about the Hydatid disease, that it is very, very prevalent throughout this country, here where you live, and the fact that if wolves are introduced into the state of Colorado, and they are already migrating into the state of Colorado, that the possibilities of humans contracting this disease is growing and increasing. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Mrs. Jones, how long have you been in this particular area of Idaho?
My husband retired in 1999, and we came up and started looking at some property up here.
So, but you've come to this region quite a bit?
We did. We've been coming up here for about 40 years in the summertime and doing a lot of hiking and climbing, and some of our good friends live right here, and so we decided to come up and retire with them and do some more fun things.
Good. So you were here off and on during the introduction of the wolves in 1995
Yes.
and 96.
Yes, it was.
Okay. And what is your background and your husband's background?
My husband was a doctor, and I'm a registered nurse, and he practiced in Boise. We raised our family there. We had 5 kids. We raised our family there, and then we moved up here. He was retired, and I continued to work at the clinic in the next town up here.
Okay. And so how long ago was that?
We purchased this house in about 2000, 2001, like right in there. And we came up on the weekends kind of fixing it up. It needed a lot of repair. And so probably full time, maybe about 2001, 2002.
Okay, good. All right. And so in the valley here, you have experienced the opportunity to see and hear wolves in this valley?
Yeah, we can hear them. Everybody in the valley can hear them just right up here in the mountains right next to us here. They have actually killed about 4 elk just right around our house here. We've seen their big footprints just outside our door, on our doorstep out here, and they're big. They're big wolves.
So probably within the next, I would say, 10 to 15 minutes during this interview, we are going to cover the aspect of you getting sick and having health problems. And so you're all right with us going into that question and answer period with you?
Yes, I just assume people know what's happening out there, what could happen out there to people, because I had to go through it.
Right. Okay. So when did you first start to experience the health problems?
Back in 2001 to 2003, I was having a lot of intestinal problems and had a lot of colonoscopies, different tests, blood tests, but it just didn't seem to go away. And so I got a doctor's appointment with an internist, thinking that maybe we'd missed something, maybe there was still something wrong. And she did a CAT scan as a diagnostic thing and found that I had a large cyst about the size of a grapefruit in my liver in the left lobe. And just said that, just like a lot of cysts in livers, that they are usually benign and not to worry about it, but we'll keep an eye on it and see what happens. So that was back, that was in 2003 that I did that.
Okay. So did they give you any medication or anything to treat that at that time?
Not at that time, because they had just decided it was benign. After I came back in 2004, I started experiencing, I was having a lot of chest pain, and I could feel a lump in here, and it was actually keeping me awake at night. It hurt so bad. And so when I went into her for just my regular yearly exam, I said, I'm having this pain and it's keeping me awake and I can feel this thing. Could that be the cyst you were talking about? And so they did another CAT scan and found that, yes, it was right exactly where I was having this discomfort. So they decided to go ahead and do an aspiration. This was in, 2004. They decided to do the aspiration and see if there was anything, what was inside it. So they did at the hospital an aspiration. They had a kind of a specialist radiologist type person that did this special procedure. And he did the biopsy and pulled out the fluid in hopes that it would just collapse the walls. And it was clear fluid, and they felt that everything was probably fine and that I would get a report from the doctor the next day. And the next day, the doctor did call, and she just said, I just have some really strange and surprising news for you, that you have onychococcus granulosa, I think it's how you pronounce it, and that is very rare in here in the United States. And so we think that we need to watch this and take care of it. This they decided about a few weeks later, after they had done this and it had taken it down, it had already started to grow back up again and fill back up with this. So they decided that they needed to do a more intensive aspiration, more complicated aspiration. And they went in and decided to go in. They were going to suck it all out, inject alcohol into it to kill what was there, and then it would adhere, be rough enough, and it would adhere these sites together so that nothing could fill it back up again. And they, I should probably mention, after the first one, the reason we went back in to do the other aspiration was because I got an infection about the size of a silver dollar where they had aspirated out, and I had a high fever that came up. So they said we need to do another aspiration to find out. So this time they did do the aspiration the more complicated way. In the middle of the procedure, they noticed the fluid was not clear like it had been. It was now kind of a milky color, and they were concerned about what was going on, and so they had me, they put me in the hospital, put me on IV antibiotics. I spiked a really high fever, and they put me on IV antibiotics and kept checking to see when the antibiotic had taken effect, that everything was okay. I was there about 4 or 5 days, and then they took me back into the emergency room down there and did the rest of the procedure, and decided that it was only about 20% open when they finished the procedure, and they figured that would be enough. And so then they left. 3 weeks later, it fills up again, and it's like 50 or 60% filled. And so then they're concerned about it, and they've sent me now to a infectious disease specialist, and he is conferring with some other doctors, and they decide that I should go ahead and have another aspiration and try it again, that I had tolerated it so well. I didn't think I tolerated it that well. But, and I actually was kind of, not feeling good about this whole idea of the aspiration things we've already been through too. It wasn't a great experience. And so I said I wanted to explore my options of having it surgically removed. And it's having the liver worked on is very complicated. And so they sent me to a specialist up in Seattle.
So when you got to Seattle and they looked at all the records, was that doctor up there surprised that you had Hydatid disease?
He was surprised I had it because there's not very many cases in the United States. He said that if you have something that's that large, it would never have been able to be aspirated out. Probably it would never have worked for something that large. And so yes, he was surprised. I asked him, so since you're a liver specialist and you specialize in this kind of thing, how many of these have you done? And he had only done 5. But yet he was a specialist in the West for doing this. And we went ahead and had the procedure done. He looked over the CAT scans before we ever came up there. He put me on a bendazole and had me take a bendazole for like 2.5 months before I came up there for the surgery.
Oh, really?
And then to keep on it for another 3 months afterwards.
Okay. So explain to us the procedure of him actually going in and surgically removing the cyst.
I know that the reason that he is specialized in the liver is because, it used to be they would just, cut things through and people would bleed to death.
Right.
But they have learned to take sections out at a time. And so they had to take out about almost a little bit less than a half of the liver that had this huge cyst in it. And they were able to get it out. They were just worried about getting it out without nicking it, because once you nick that cyst, those go everywhere and you have real problems. Then he was able to get it out intact.
Good. So was the incision quite large then?
Yeah. He did the incision from my sternum down to my waist and around to my back over here. And it was about 16 or 17 inches, I think, long. Okay. And they did it long enough, because during the CAT scans, they also found that there was some more cysts over in the right side, right lobe, and they wanted to be able to access that. And then they also wanted to check my intestine as they were, so that's why it was so big.
Okay.
And he said it would take a long time to recover, at least 2 months from it.
Okay. So that was quite an incision that you went through.
Oh, it was huge.
Right.
It was a huge incision.
Mm-hmm. Well, the main thing is that right now they believe they've gotten everything as far. Now, do you have to do checkups periodically? I had to have a CAT scan once a year I was supposed to have it for the rest of my life. A CAT scan once a year to check on these others or see if there were any new that came up from the surgical one. I did not have anything that progressed or happened within that. After the 10 years, my internist that I had said, well, why don't we just kind of monitor this then at this point, and then we'll just do it every once in a while and double check on it. So that's where we're at now. Okay. So that was done in 2005?
That was March of 2005. Okay,
and here we are, 2019.
Yes.
So most likely you're going to be going in very soon to have another test?
Yes, I talked to her recently, and we're going to do it.
Okay. If you were to talk to people from Colorado about living in the environment with wolves and knowing what you know now about echinococcus granulosus, hydatid cysts that you have experienced, what would you say to people right now when we're talking about doing a major introduction through a ballot initiative of bringing wolves into Colorado?
I think the main thing that I just would like to get the message across is this can happen. It can happen to humans. You can get this disease that normally humans didn't get here in the United States. But because of the wolf being brought in from Canada with the disease, that now we have such a high percentage of it here, and it is around us, and it is so, people need to know, it stays, even though it freezes, the eggs, and they stay. They live through all this. And in the summers when you're riding your four-wheelers or you're hiking up in the mountains, you hit any of that dung or whatever from the wolf, and you have a chance of ingesting that back up in that dust that comes back.
Right.
And so I think they need to know that it is a real thing that can happen, and it's not something fun. It's costly, and it wasn't any fun.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the cost, because, you had it exasperated twice and then made the decision that that's not working. So now you've went the route to have it surgically removed.
Yes.
Where do you think the cost was involved in this from the very beginning to the time when they actually went to Seattle and had it removed?
From the whole thing, from the very beginning till we had it, was about $63,000.
And you do have insurance too, right?
I did have good insurance, thank heavens, and they did pay the majority of it. Mm-hmm. But I did have to pay quite a bit too, as out of pocket. I don't know exactly the costs on that right now, but obviously more than I wanted to, or would have liked to have paid. Yes.
Mrs. Jones, you had told me when I talked to you on the phone prior to coming up here that you had attended a meeting, and I believe in 2011?
2011 is when they had it up here, yeah.
And this was a meeting that was put together by livestock producers and sportsmen?
Yes, and people out of Montana that had been having problems with the wolves up there had come down, and they were going to kind of have a public meeting about what was happening with the wolves.
So what happened during that meeting?
Well, I was contacted to come to the meeting and to just briefly explain a little bit about what I had gone through. And the veterinarian and the person in charge contacted me back and said that they had some concerns because the pro-wolf people had said they were going to bomb the building. And so they didn't know if they should have it somewhere else or do whatever they needed to do. We ended up having it in the same building, and there was no problem with anything. There was no disturbance of any kind with that. But there is a strong pro-wolf environment up here with in Idaho, in some areas of Idaho, who really want the wolves here. And so that's why I am a little leery of getting
cautious.
My identity and whatever.
Absolutely, and you know, we are very concerned about protecting your identity, protecting your property, and but again, you know, thank you so much for the opportunity to come
You're
up.
welcome.
And you're a very brave woman to do this.
Well, I really want people to be educated and to know what can happen to people.
Right.
They can get it. Humans can get it.
Yes, and so we are looking forward to doing a live show on RFD TV.
Oh.
And so we'll be on television with Dr. Geis, Scott Rockholm from Idaho, and a livestock producer by the name of Phil Davis, who has experienced multiple depredation on livestock, documented livestock of over 60 animals that have been killed. And so the message that we're trying to get out is to educate the public about the consequences and the harmful consequences about wolves.
Yes.
And especially in Colorado, about an introduction of wolves that the environmental people want, and they want 250 wolves introduced into western Colorado.
Gosh.
In the Yellowstone ecosystem up here, when they introduced wolves in 95, 96, and 97, the total was 66.
Yeah. It's a whole lot of difference.
A huge amount of wolves. And they strongly believe
in a really populated state.
Yes. And they strongly believe that Colorado can host 1,000 wolves on the western slope. But again, our populace in Colorado right now is pushing 6 million. Your state, Montana, are a fraction of that as far as the populace.
Oh, yeah.
And they have forecast in Colorado by 2040, we will have another 3 million people. And so we have a tremendous amount of people that come into our state every summer, whether they come to hike, climb the 14ers, fish, if they come in the fall to hunt, or to come just view the colors, or ski.
Yeah.
We have a huge influx of people coming into our state. And so we have no room for the wolf. And it's almost, you know, you feel sad that you're going to bring the wolf into Colorado and immediately have conflicts with the wolf. Where here, your populace is so much smaller, and you already have conflicts with the wolf.
Yeah, percentage.
And you have dealt with it personally and suffered from it. And so that's our goal, is to educate the public about that and to hopefully raise enough money to get out and educate the public. There's a statement that's been made to us here in Colorado by people from Idaho, your state, Montana, and Wyoming, that have said, if Colorado loses this ballot initiative to the wolf, we will lose the West.
And I believe it. I believe it.
It's a very serious thing.
Yes.
So, again, Mrs. Jones, thank you for the opportunity to be here with you, your hospitality, and we wish you all the well. As far as the disease is concerned.
I'm hoping that it's all over with,
well,
but we will still have to keep checking on it.
Do us a favor here at Big Game Forever. When you get your next report, give us a call.
Okay, I will.
You know, we'd like
she's going to do it this summer here.
Like to know that things are all right.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this most important interview. Big Game Forever is always committed to protecting our big game populations. But we're also concerned about Hydatid disease and its effect on humans and also on our wildlife. Thank you again for watching, and we're asking you to go to biggameforever.org, join, donate, and get engaged. Thank you.